welcome to Culture here on I-24 News. I'm Oded Groper. Thank you for joining me. The world is in mourning today following the terrorist attack in Paris on the offices of French satire magazine Charlie Hebdo. We'll be devoting most of our show today to that terrible event and its consequences. This heinous attack was aimed not just at Charlie Hebdo and its cartoonists, but also at freedom of speech all around the world. With me in the studio is Asaf Gamzu from the Israeli Cartoon Museum. Hello, Asaf.
Hi.
You'll help us get to the bottom of this event and what it means to us all. But first, let's take a look at a story prepared by David Gombin that tells us a little bit more about Charlie Hebdo magazine. Here it is.
France mourns the death of Wilinski, Cabot, Charbonneau. Among the other satirical journalists of the country, a large part of the French satirical press is now dead. 40 years of funny, impertinent, and politically engaged caricatures are no more. At its inception, the magazine was part of Harakiri newspaper. In 1969, Kavanagh, one of France's leading journalists, gathered his friends Gebe, Cabot, and Professor Choron. Together, they funded Harakiri Hebdo, a weekly magazine that never hesitated to tackle political leadership, most especially General de Gaulle. In 1970, when de Gaulle deceased, the magazine did not hesitate to publish macabre jokes. Banned from publication and wishing to circumvent censors, Harakiri changed its name, and as a wink at its favorite target, Charles de Gaulle, it was named Charlie Hebdo. Always insolent, funny, and subversive, Charlie Hebdo stopped at nothing, until the crash. In 1980, with no readers and no income, Charlie closed down. Thanks to Wilinski, Philippe Val, Cabot, and the French pop singer Renaud, Charlie Hebdo was revived in 1992. Same format, same writers, and a stronger leftist orientation, mostly fighting against extremism of all kinds. In 2006, Charlie Hebdo decided to publish a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad as an act of solidarity with a Danish magazine, which printed a caricature despite the controversy that surrounded the publication. In 2007, the cover of Charlie Hebdo showed a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad weeping and lamenting that only assholes loved him, causing once again a general outcry, and the magazine was marked as a target by Islamist extremists. A Molotov cocktail was thrown at the offices in November 2011, burning it down. But that did not succeed in intimidating the magazine's editorial board. In 2012, on its front page, Charlie Hebdo made once again fun of those who do not accept to be made fun of. As the Muslim world screamed, France was forced to strengthen security at all its official institutions abroad. Today, the editorial board has been partly decimated, and the magazine is plagued by huge financial debts. Is one of the last heirs of French satirical tradition in danger of vanishing? After the bloody attack, many forces appear to come together in an attempt to keep it alive and kicking.
So, Asaf, thanks for being here once again. You know, this is an awful matter, of course. Give us a little more backstory about Charlie Hebdo, about its importance, because I think that people outside of France don't necessarily know it that well.
Well, I think Charlie Hebdo needs to be put in the context of not just this century or perhaps the 1968 student uprising, but a tradition in France of cartooning and caricature that aims to really be as radical and as even to the point of nonsensical and provocative and hurtful for its own sake, just for the sake of free speech. This is a tradition that goes back over 200 years to the French Revolution, and these are people that really do want they want to provoke, and they want to be able to say what they want to say, because that's part of democracy.
Yeah, even if it is sometimes with a little bit poor taste,
exactly.
Some would say.
Even, Harakiri, which, as we saw in the story, was the originator of this magazine. Their slogan was, without taste, dumb and nasty. That was their slogan. That's what we are.
Yeah. Now, we're seeing a lot of support from cartoonists all around the world showing their support, showing their mourning. How do you, did you expect this? Do you think there's as much as you thought we'd see?
Well, I have to say that there'll be a yes and a no. On the one hand, Charlie Hebdo had a wonderful staff and wonderful cartoonists working for it, but it was never mainstream. It was always at the far left side of the map. So on the one hand, supposedly where is all this coming from? On the other hand, I think this attack is emblematic. People, as you said, know that this isn't an attack of Charlie Hebdo. This is an attack of a magazine, and the fact that the magazine was he only had sold so much copies doesn't matter. This is an attack on our ability to say, as you said, tasteless things, and that's part of free speech, and that is why illustrators, cartoonists, reporters, who I can assure you would never have read Charlie Hebdo if they would have walked by a magazine and they wouldn't have picked it up, but they know that this is important. You have to. This is one of my favorite illustrations, by the way.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Some great responses there. This is hardly, and we'll touch on it in later on the show, but this is hardly the first time that this is happening. I mean, we've seen it with in Denmark cartoon back in 2005, 2006. Yeah, in
2006. You mean the Muslim reaction to certain cartoons? Definitely, we've seen it in Denmark in 2006. Afterwards, it was reprinted. The same cartoons were reprinted by Charlie Hebdo and added upon. And afterwards, in 2007. They were sued by the Grand Mosque of Paris, and in 2011 they were actually firebombed with a Molotov cocktail in their offices, which were utterly destroyed, and they just picked right up and continued.
You know, that raises a question of what's the state's responsibility? I mean, because when they published these sorts of cartoons, they were taking a risk, and that I think they knew they were taking a risk. Now, the state, on the one hand, you know, they're taking a risk. The state has nothing to do with it. But on the other hand, freedom of speech does dictate that freedom of speech should be enabled.
I agree with you completely. I think that's a very touchy subject. And I personally think that the state needs to support these sort of newspapers. But on the other hand, you see these newspapers, they are private people, as you said. They take a risk. There have been death threats. They were sued. The French government at one point came to Charlie Hebdo and asked them to restrain them. Didn't order them to do anything, not by any legal means. They just asked them to restrain themselves, and they didn't agree to do it. So on the one hand, we have private people, but on the other hand, they're doing something which government cannot do, but which is imperative in democratic civil society, and that is maintaining free speech. And you know, government can't do that, and but government needs
in
to
a
keep
way it's
this.
required.
Exactly.
You know, we've seen all kind of responses. Most of them said, we're not afraid, we will continue to do this. But on the other hand, there are some responses that are different. And for instance, Amos Biderman, the cartoonist for Haaretz newspaper here in Israel, he published a column saying, I am afraid, I'll quote, he says, the bad guys have already won. There's no cartoonist or publisher in the world who would dare mess with them. Everyone's shaking in their boots.
I think that, you know, we appreciate and love Biderman for his brutal honesty, and I think he's being brutally honest here as well. I think he's saying the truth, because the fact that Charlie Hebdo in 2006 republished the Danish cartoons, they knew what they were doing, and they knew that they were doing something that other people were not willing to do. They were doing something really out of, I wouldn't say disregard, because these are people that cared very much, but maybe they cared for democracy and freedom of speech and the ability to say what they wanted, and they knew that their lives were at risk. And I perfectly understand people who are afraid. I think many of us are afraid, and we may see this sort of counter reaction with maybe a rise in more touchy and snappy cartoons in the foreseeable future. But
there's no question that people will think twice.
No question. No question.
Thank you so much, Asaf.
Thank you for having me.
Unfortunately, as we said, this was hardly the first time that artists from around the world have been threatened and attacked by extremists. Daniel Campos brings us a look at the tragic history of violence against artists.
Artists move us beyond dogmas, but in order to do so, they sometimes need to pay a very high price, as seen in the recent murder of the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists. For a very long time, Islamic extremists have harassed and murdered artists they consider are committing blasphemy. We are familiar with the famous 1989 death fatwa against Salman Rushdie for the publication of his book The Satanic Verses, The book caused protests in the Muslim world, and as a result of these protests, 35 people, mostly Alevi intellectuals, were killed in Turkey. They had gathered for a cultural festival in Sivas when a mob of Salafis set fire to the hotel where they were assembled. Danish cartoonist Kurt Westergaard is also a famous case when in 2005 he released a controversial cartoon of Prophet Muhammad wearing a bomb in his turban. Both Rushdie and Westergaard need to live under the constant surveillance of police. But there are many artists and authors which have paid a higher price. In 1992, Egyptian thinker, philosopher, and secular Muslim Farag Fouda was assassinated. He had been accused of blasphemy for his critical articles and satires about Islamic fundamentalism in Egypt. In the 1990s, popular Algerian rhyme musicians Chev Hasni and Chev Aziz were murdered after receiving numerous death threats from Islamic fundamentalists who declared that their music and lyrics were blasphemous. In 2004, Theo Van Gogh was murdered in retribution for his short film Submission, in collaboration with Somali author and activist Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who until this day has to live under the protection of bodyguards. The film criticized the treatment of women in Islam. In 2005, Shaima Rezai, a TV presenter on the Afghan music TV channel, was killed by Islamic militants. She was the first female Western-style music presenter to appear on TV in Afghanistan. In 2011, Israeli actor Giuliano Markamis, who was born to a Jewish mother and an Arab father, was shot 5 times by masked militants in Jenin. Before his assassination, he had received death threats for corrupting the youth of Jenin. There are many artists who continue to live under the constant fear of ending their lives at the hand of the extremists. Among them, Bangladeshi author Taslima Nasrin. Since 1993, she lives in fear after the publication of her novel Shame. The fatwa was revived in 2007. Since 2008, Mariwan Halabje, author of the book Sex, Sharia and Women in the History of Islam, also has to live in fear. And just a few weeks ago, a new name was added to the list. Algerian author Kamel Daoud is now dealing with a Facebook fatwa issued against him by a Salafi imam from Algiers. In the wake of the Charlie Hebdo attack, we can only hope that artists will stop paying this awful price for speaking their minds.
And now we'll try to put these heavy, sad matters behind us and look forward with Shachar Peled and her segment, Off Screen. Welcome, Shachar.
Hi, Oded.
There are some good things going to happen in
indeed
2015.
a tragic opening for 2015, but we'll try and stay optimistic and look ahead at the good stuff that awaits us, and especially in television, it's going to be a very interesting year. We start with the most anticipated, much awaited, some even say probably will be...
overhyped,
yes,
maybe.
impossible expectations to stand Better Call... yes, it's Better Call Saul, which is the prequel for Breaking Bad. This is 6 years before the appearance of Saul Goodman. By the way, his real name is Jimmy McGill, and we'll find out more about his life in this
Certainly
TV
one
show.
of the most beloved characters of
Absolutely, and it's a great thing they've done this prequel, and we were also promised that events during and perhaps after Breaking Bad will also appear here. Jonathan Banks will reappear as well, reprise his role as Mike Ehrmantraut, Saul's private investigator. So a lot to wait and see there. It's once again by the creator of Breaking Bad, Vince Gilligan. And speaking of Gilligan, it's not the only show he will present this year, but a second show as well. It's called Battle Creek, and this is a very interesting one. It's going to be a collaboration between Gilligan and David Shaw, the creator of House MD, where Breaking Bad meets House MD. Very interesting.
Imagine.
Yes, this is yet another drama which meets 2 law enforcement officers from the FBI and a cop. We've seen this recently in True Detective and in The Bridge, 2 very opposite personas meeting and having to collaborate together.
Is that also on AMC?
This will be, I'm not sure, though he is a talent of AMC. I'm not sure it's going to be AMC, though.
I guess CBS.
Yes, and we move on. Much like the praised Homeland and In Treatment, another Israeli show receives an American adaptation. This one is Allegiance, airing on NBC this February. the original show in Israel is called Gordon's Cell, and this is about a Russian immigrant family who is indeed a secret spy cell here in Israel, and this is the original story. There is a slight variation in the American adaptation, but since the Israeli version is very, very highly praised, and after Homeland and Intriguement,
did a second season,
absolutely,
people love it.
And we hope it will receive the same treatment in the United States. And finally, 12 Monkeys, based on the 1995 film starring
Wonderful
Brad
film,
Pitt and Bruce Willis. Once again, this is very much like the film, a science fiction mystery drama where a man comes back from the future to prevent a virus from spreading and diminishing Earth.
We'll hope that it'll be good, and there is something to look forward to. Thank you,
just a
Jaffa.
glimpse for the sake of comparison.
Thanks. We're done for today. I hope you enjoyed our show. We'll try to be back with better news next week.